Hey everybody, long time no talk, Dr. Stephen James here to bring you another video. Today I'm going to be ranking every mission in Chapter 6 of Red Dead Redemption 2 from worst to best. Before we begin, I have just a few things to say. One, I apologize that this upload took so long. It's just that there are so many of these to go through, and there's the matter of collecting the footage for all of them, and I just didn't want to deal for the most part. And for another, I will not be including The Course of True Love and I Don't Seek Absolution because those are technically side missions, and I'm going to dedicate an entirely different video to those. For another, we are not going to have the same opinion. That's the key word here, opinion. This is an opinion-based video. You're going to disagree with me. But if we could agree to disagree, sure would appreciate that. And for another thing, I'm trying to get to 100 subscribers by the end of the year. So if you could click the subscribe button before you click off the video, sure would appreciate that. With all that being said, let's kick this off. And one last note, I don't hate any of the missions in Chapter 6. In fact, I enjoy all of them, except for this number 17 pick, which is Fork in the Road. Yeah, surely you all know this had to go at the bottom, because, let's see, where do I go with this one? Well, for one, you can't control when this one is going to happen. I mean, you can. There's a certain proximity in Saint Denis that you have to avoid, which this usually happens when I'm on my way to Sadie's, Sadie at the pub. Only this time I was just coming out of an alleyway from Trelawney's doorstep because I saw online that there was that you could visit Trelawney at his place in free roam, and I wanted to check it out. But yeah, for the most part, you don't really control when Arthur starts wheezing and coughing uncontrollably, thus falling to the floor. And it serves as the reminder that it serves as a confirmation for the first time playing that Arthur is a dead man walking, thus completely shattering his world and shattering the hearts of those of us who played him for, some of us, over 100 hours in free roam, because I say hundreds of hours because a lot of us like to prolong the happy chapters in the game, chapters 2 and 3, but I'm not one of those, so for me it's probably no more than 80 hours, but I digress. Anyway, yeah, for obvious reasons, it had to go to the bottom, and I do enjoy the walking out of the office and Arthur just hearing flashbacks from people from Arthur's past. It's cinematic masterpiece, but yeah, totally sucks, and I think that's about all I have to say about it. Oh, I totally forgot to mention that random NPC, that Samaritan who helped Arthur to the doctor. It was a cool Easter egg that it was the same. There have been theories going around that the German guy from the original Red Dead Redemption that you had to duel as John Marston was the same guy but only it wasn't really this German fellow. I don't think it was the other German fellow from A Strange Kindness. I think it's cool. I think it would have been pretty cool if this guy was him, but that's neither confirmed nor denied. So, yeah. Anyway, moving on. At number 16, I have put Honor Amongst Thieves. So, the reason why this is at the bottom for me is because, well, toward the bottom for me is because, one, it's totally missable. I mean, you can agree to, to activate this mission, you have to agree to help Captain Monroe in the Archaeology for Beginners mission, which is also missable in and of itself. But I'll get into that when time comes to rank it. For another thing, I don't know, like this whole Indians or Native Americans, if I don't want to get demonetized, this whole dispute between the Native Americans and the soldiers is just, I don't know, it's kind of a triggering one. And well, this one, you have to just simply get some vaccines for from the caravan. Now, apparently there is a way to do it stealthily, but I just haven't really been good enough to be able to do that. Skill issue, I know, but maybe someday I'll figure it out. But yeah, anyway, I mean, you would think you could just call out to them and make them surrender. I even try straight up disarming them at one point, but for some reason their hands are, I guess, made of stainless steel, and therefore their hands will eat bullets like a sponge. The reason this is so low is because, one, it is missable. Two, I feel like there should be multiple ways that you should be able to approach this. And three, well, the fact that you shouldn't even have to fight to get the vaccines for these poor folks to begin with. But, you do. I mean, I guess it's a pretty happy ending, but not really all that exciting in my opinion. I mean, the thing with Chapter 6 is, even though it is sad, I mean, there's no shortage of exciting missions. This one just happens to be one of the least exciting in my opinion, so that's why it goes second to the bottom at number 16. And I think I've said all I need to say about that, so moving on to number 15. So at number 15, I have decided to put a Rage Unleashed. Yeah, I know. A lot of you would probably put this closer to the top 10 at least, but the reason why that's not the case for me is because, one, just like with the number 16 pick, this one shouldn't even, be something I need to do. This is the first omen of Dutch riling up eagle flies. Well, someone who is already riled up. I mean, we first meet him in Saint Denis, and he was really no different. The thing I don't like with, the one thing I don't like with the Rains Fall and Eagle Flies arc is that they're so stereotypical. But with Rains Fall, I kind of like his philosophy. He's a more engaging character. With Eagle Flies, while I understand his frustration, I actually kind of sympathize with him. His bloodthirst can be pretty nauseating at times, to tell you the truth. But anyway, another thing is, I mean, we could easily just use that same boat to go to Tahiti. I mean, not entirely sure what Dutch's plan is, but it's pretty clear that there are way better ways to go about this. You know, I mean, one, I will say it's more exciting than the mission with Colonel Favors, because one, you get to blow up an anchor, and which leads to a pretty epic ship crash, I have to admit. Once that happens, you have to bring a bunch of horses back to the shore, which can be a little tricky if the horse you're bringing over doesn't have a lot of stamina, but I've never really had a problem with that. It's just not hard to imagine someone out there in the world having an issue with it. But overall, I would say it's a pretty fun mission. It's just the fact that, again, like Charles, I mean, I can't remember whether Arthur or Charles said it, but we could always just get them more horses. I mean, really, we do not need to do that, even though it can be pretty satisfying to stick it to Uncle Sam. The fact that this shouldn't even need to be done to begin with is just enough to justify putting it toward the bottom. Oh, and also that rude remark from Dutch at the end, like, "Oh, Arthur needs a rest. He needs a nappy." It's just so condescending. Oh, and this is the one where archaeology for beginners, you have the option to kick off. This is the mission in which you have the option to help him, which of course I do. I know there are a ton of dishonorable players out there who play this game. I mean, but even so, I don't think I've ever met one who would skip this mission. But on the off chance you have, let me know in the comments if you choose to, decline Dutch Charles' request to help Rains fall. But yeah, anyway, I think I've talked about this mission enough. Let's move on to number 14. This one's sure to trigger some people, but at number 14, I have the Bridge to Nowhere. I know, I can imagine some of you clicking dislike right now, but just hear me out. For one thing, you can no longer take a train until the epilogue. You can no longer take a train to free roam anywhere, and we all enjoy taking the train in this game, I feel like. But other than that, the whole blowing up the bridge, why do it? I mean, I know it's to create noise and distraction. Another reason I can't justify putting it any higher is that whole thing where Arthur and John nearly get hit by a train is just unnecessary suspense. I mean, they could just wait for the train to pass by, since that pump car, whatever the hell that thing is called, is going to get hit anyway, what's the point of putting themselves in danger too? They should have just waited for the train to pass and then gone and then exited the bridge. Now, I've talked about all of that. Now let me explain why. Now let me go over why this mission is really good. One, the whole dialogue between John and Arthur. I mean, in the beginning, John was a rather unlikable character. He's just neglectful and deserves more attention that he gets. That's not really the case here. I feel like John is has really grown throughout the course of 6 full chapters. Well, or I guess I should say 3 long chapters, 1 short one, and another one that he isn't even in, talking about chapter 5. But yeah, I don't know, just would have been pretty interesting to come to think of it. It would have been pretty interesting to see what life was like for John on the inside. I think this is the only time he ever gets locked up. Is it possible for him to get arrested when you hang out with him in free mode? I don't think so. I just, I don't really, yeah. Oh, and you get the satisfying of blowing up a bridge. Now, it's fun to blow stuff up, even though it does cost your ability to take the train anywhere. Oh, and that cheap gag, while it might be kind of cheesy, I haven't heard a single player at least chuckle at that gag where John and Arthur are about to light cigarettes, but then look to the side, realizing they're next to a crate full of dynamite, and then just throw their cigarettes to the side. That's pretty funny. Yeah, dark games and sitcoms like this, really make those cheap gags really shine. They really make those cheap and mild humor gags shine. So, yeah, it's just, yeah, the fact that there was no action apart from the needless ones, I just couldn't justify putting this any higher. Just know that the fact that it's toward the bottom just goes to show how exciting the others above this one are. Even though I could technically still flip this number 14 pick through 12 pretty easily, I think I'm good with my placement here. So yeah, moving on.
Risking our connection for what exactly? For an idea that don't work no more.
And coming in at number 13, I have The Delights of Van Horn. I know, for some of you, this one and number 14 could easily be flipped, and I agree. Like I said, numbers 14 through 12 could easily be flipped, but the reason why it's not, the reason why it's ahead of this one is, well, there's just more action involved, and it doesn't feel ridiculously, needlessly thrown in like the one where you have to try to outrun a train through one of those wagon car things. I think that's what it's called, actually. Yeah, so yeah, even though it so heavily involves two of the least likable characters. I feel like it worked, at least for Bill, because he mentions the killing Cornwall, killing Cornwall needed to be done, and I agree to that. So Bill playing drunk in order to make the wagon drivers and the guards put their guard down was honestly, I wouldn't say it was a genius play, but it worked, and honestly it was one of the few moments in which throughout the campaign in which I feel like Bill shined as a character. He's still not my favorite, but it's not an overly complicated mission, at least. And plus you get to shoot up a bunch of people on the way back to camp. And you have the option to either let Bill drive or take the reins yourself. It really feels like an open world game if little choices like that are involved. Still can't stand Micah, but the fact that again it's just more necessary. I mean, as long as there's action that isn't forced in, I feel like it just comes in a smidge higher than the Bridge to Nowhere. And plus, at least it doesn't affect your ability to do anything in free roam, unlike the last one. So that's also something. Anyway, moving on. Full disclosure, the number 12 mission I said could be flipped with 13 and 14. Not this one. Not the fine art of conversation. This was a last minute choice because my original number 12 pick has been moved to like number 10, and I'll explain why when I get to it. But the reason why the fine art of conversation has been moved back a bit is because, like Colonel Favors says, it was remarkably unproductive. I mean, there are a couple things I like about it, and I'll get into that, but, well, actually, it'll take less time to talk about why this thing is worth liking. I mean, well, there are really only two things I like about it. I mean, the remark that Captain Monroe made when Colonel Favors says, "Now where was I?" And Captain Monroe says, "You were a man of many limits." That was, that was treasonous, but they were gonna have him executed anyway. But, the one other thing I like about this is and this one would have put it higher if it wasn't such a rare cutscene. It's the dialogue between Arthur and sister, what was her name from the original Red Dead Redemption. But unless you've completed the Help a Brother Out and of Angels and Men mission chains, and you still have High Honor, which not everyone does. For those reasons, I mean, I always use this cutscene. I mean, I always get this cutscene, but if you don't, which again most people haven't, it's you get an alternate cutscene with Reverend Swanson instead. A character in which I still don't care about. So yeah, you have to say goodbye to two characters in the story, Swanson and Trelawney. And it's a pretty sad revolution. So yeah, it's kind of why that's one of the reasons why it's low. Other reasons, one, it's a meeting. Meetings are boring, and Arthur, and by Arthur I mean, and as Arthur, and as someone who's playing him, it's kind of embarrassing to have to keep interrupting with the constant coughing, and then you overhear when you've been escorted to a tent, you overhear a couple soldiers talking about how they're going to have Captain Monroe executed for treason, even though he's one of the few good men fighting for the army in this game. I feel like I feel like hardly any of the characters get a happy ending in this chapter, I feel like. But that's another but that's, another thing. So I mean, the action sequence after the meeting is pretty exciting. I mean, it's no better, no worse than any average any sequence of action that we've seen throughout the story. So yeah, I mean, the only thing that would put it higher for me is the cutscene with Mother Superior. It's just so, it's, powerful stuff. So yeah, about time to move on to what I still believe to be my number 11 pick.
But I know you.
You don't know me.
Forgive me, but that's the problem. You don't know you.
And at number 11, I have put The King's Son. So, let me focus on the positive things I have to say about this one. One, I enjoy when Eagle Flies says, after Arthur asks, "Are you okay?" He says, "Sure, I enjoy being tortured. It clears the mind." The other thing I enjoy is the dialogue between Arthur and Charles on the way to Fort Wallace. And then there's and you get to blow the door open with a cannon. Or you could use dynamite, alternatively, that works too. Or, and I also enjoy the chase scene on a boat ride, shooting down a bunch of people. If you could do all that without hitting any rocks while on the rapids, it's pretty satisfying. Other than that, don't really care for it all that much. Let me explain why it's at the bottom. I mean, not in the top 10. For one thing, he shouldn't have even been captured to begin with. It's just stupid Dutch again, whipping him up in a frenzy. And the other reason it's no higher than number 11 is, well, I don't know, it's a Prison Break, but that's the only thing that stands out about it. I mean, we already had a Prison Break scene, which was way more badass in this chapter than what we're doing with Charles. I mean, I know it's technically a fort and not a prison, but they're keeping prisoners, so it's the same thing to me. So, yeah, I mean, it's pretty satisfying doing the whole thing stealthily and watching that tent burn, which you use an arrow to blow up a lantern. And, you know, fighting out of it is pretty fun, but I don't know. The rest of the mission feels pretty mid, to be honest. Like, it doesn't really stand out as one of the greats. Plus, again, I mean, you could do it. I mean, you could break out Charles. I mean, you could break out Eaglefly. I mean, you could get into the fine art of conversation before going with Dutch to take out a bunch of soldiers, but the fact is I don't, which means that every time I play the fine art of conversation, Eagleflies is already in custody. So it feels like a futile attempt to peacefully try to get his son back at that point, not just to keep the lands that they currently reside on. Yeah, and yeah, this whole thing between the army and the Indians are tragedy. I know I should say Native Americans, but I mean, I'm adding copyright music anyway, so I don't care at this point. I mean, the whole thing is just so pointless and stupid. The only reason why they want him off the Wapiti Indian Reservation is for oil, which turns out to not even have an oil supply after all. So, yeah, I mean, this one just kind of feels like, again, something that shouldn't exist, but it's still fun, kind of. And again, the dialogue between Charles and Arthur is something to listen to. But yeah, moving on to to the top 10. And at number 10, Red Dead Redemption. Oof, boy, do we have a lot to talk about this one. For starters, it is really long. They could have easily broken this down into 2 completely different missions. But the way it starts is we are on our way back to camp from just coming back from a train heist when Tilly with Jack runs up and telling us they took Abigail, and Dutch just decides, fuck her. We don't need her here anymore. I mean, to be fair, it was really mainly Micah who said that, who throughout the campaign has been creepily and annoyingly simping for Abigail, tells Dutch that she's not worth it. So, of course, Arthur and Sadie are forced to go at it alone. All this talk after all them years. So, yeah, we get her back from the clutches of Agent Milton. Oh, and that's another reason this one is ranked so high. That piece of shit, Agent Milton, finally gets to die. The only drawback is we don't get to do it ourselves. It actually... yeah, we give them some money, and we give Tilly and Abigail... we give Tilly and Jack some money and tell them to go wait while Sadie and I go get her back. And this is the second time that we have perched with a sniper in Van Horn, providing Overwatch. And just it's a fun mission, and Agent Milton confirms what I, for one, have pretty much known all along, that Molly wasn't the rat. She just said that to get under Dutch's skin, and that it was Micah all along. Honestly, when the first time I played this campaign, I thought maybe Micah had coerced her into confessing that she ratted them out. So, I mean, they did arrive together, so I feel like I definitely would not put that past Micah. But however the case, whatever her motivation is, turns out Molly was innocent all along. And so yeah, we're after we get Abigail back, we're chased down with a bunch of lawmen, and when we're finally clear, Arthur gives Abigail the fake news that John was killed in action. Honestly, I think it would have been pretty beautiful if we could see Abigail's reaction to John running up to Abigail and Jack after being presumed dead. And Tilly and Sadie were there too. I think if this were an actual sitcom or movie, whatever, that would have been really something to see. Like, they could have had it happen. I mean, they could have switched between scenes. Arthur dying on the mountain, and John reuniting with his family. I feel like they really had a missed opportunity there, but yeah. So anyway, the song "That's the Way It Is" playing while hearing quotes from various individuals that Arthur helped throughout the story on the way back to camp to confront Micah. It's very heart-wrenching and powerful stuff. I just one thing I don't like about it, one minor thing I don't like about it is Sadie treats Arthur like a wounded dog. And when she says, "I'll cover and you cover me, I'll run for her," and she says, "Because you're the better shot." And Arthur says, "No, that's not why." But yeah, whatever. So everyone treated Arthur like he was weak, which, I mean, he kind of was, but he had a lot of fight left in him, as he was forced to prove when Sadie herself got taken down upon entering the fence that Abigail was holed up in. So upon finally reaching camp, Arthur talks to Micah in front of everyone, saying how he talked, and Arthur says, "It all makes sense now." He says, "No, it damn well doesn't." And everyone draws their guns, and right at this precise moment, I mean, it was, if you already know it was a prequel and that John is the playable character, I understand there might be some people who would have been in the dark, but the way John, I mean, it was perfect timing, the way John entered camp and said, "Dutch, you left me to die." The expression on Dutch's face when he rolls up, I mean, he's really been found out there. And the part where Susan Grimshaw gets shot in the gut by Micah, it accomplishes two things. One, it's an interesting parallel to how she shot Molly, who turned out to be innocent. And two, I mean, Dutch had a policy against firearms at camp. It just goes to show you how much his character quality has declined throughout the story, and I gotta say, I kind of like it. Watching his decline throughout the story, and it is ever present. And Arthur says, "Bill, Javier, think for yourselves." And Javier says, "There are Pinkertons coming." And if you pay close attention, you can actually see them lurking behind you during the cutscenes. So, yeah, it's just a very exciting mission. And the reason why it's no higher than number 10 is because you have to finally say goodbye to a character that we've really come to know and love. Rockstar created the most compelling playable character in history, and we're forced to finally say goodbye to him. But not before Oh, and that's another thing. There are like 4 different outcomes throughout his ending. When you go back for the money, you either get stabbed in the back, or you just die flat on your back, reaching for the sky and then collapsing. Which, I mean, it depends on whether you have high or low honor. Similarly to if you decide to escort John, Micah shoots you in the face if you have high honor. And when right before that, Micah says, "Damn you," and Arthur with the perfect combat line, the perfect final words, "Damn us both." But yeah, and if you have high honor, you just die peacefully sitting on top of the mountain while Crash of Worlds is playing in the background. Oof, such very beautiful gameplay. Again, it would have been better if we could see John reunite with Abigail, Jack, Tilly, and Sadie. Again, I feel like that was a missed opportunity. But anyway, before Arthur dies on the hill, he says some final words to Dutch, who came up and interrupted the fight between him and Micah. All the quotes from Arthur while he's like covered in blood, I swear I would almost be willing to say he was like choking back tears. I mean, heck, we all were. He was like, "I gave you all I had. I tried. In the end, I did." And it's just, oof. One thing I think would have also been cool is that in one of the 4 scenarios, obviously it would be if you went back for the money, because unlike if you escort John, you get to use knives, and in one of the outcomes you can take out Micah's eye. It's I think it would have been awesome if you could give him a little more to remember you by. I mean, it would have been nice if you could have chosen to, if you could have done that no matter what scenario you choose. I think it would have been really awesome. Of course, it would have also been awesome if there was a fifth scenario in which Arthur didn't die at all, but I think it's time we accept it. Oh, and I almost forgot to emphasize the fact that we could finally fight that piece of shit Micah. Whether it be fists or through knives, it's pretty clear that Rockstar knew that this would be what we all anticipated, hence why there's absolutely no HUD whatsoever during the fight. I mean, if you're fighting along a cliff edge, I mean, you really feel like, I mean, any one of them could have been easily pushed down a cliff. I mean, it would have been pretty cheap, but effective. I mean, during the whole sequence where you're purposefully both avoiding cliffs, both being pushed and like avoid being the push E, I just kind of feels like it's forced at that point. Like, why wouldn't you want to push one another off a cliff? It just doesn't make sense. But that's about all I have to say to that. So yeah, rest in peace, Arthur Morgan. Oh, and rest in peace to the horse that also dies, too. The very horse that, if you're like me and you stick to the same horse that you bought a while ago in Chapter 2 with Hosea, it's also a pretty hard goodbye. Yeah, like I said, there have been a lot of hard goodbyes in Chapter 6. Yeah, and I mean, the one thing I don't like about it is that you just can't even try to revive him. And you just have to accept the fact, because, I mean, it's not like I've got 5 horse revives that I've been saving throughout the entire campaign. Oh, wait, I do. The whole thing is just ridiculous. But, you know, at least you get to keep the saddle interchangeably as John. But yeah, again, rest in peace, Arthur Morgan. Moving on. I'm not crying, you are. And coming in at number 9, I have chosen to place visiting hours. So, I'm sure a lot of you probably would have put this a little higher, and I understand, but let me explain a few reasons why I put it at number 9. One, Abigail is a little annoying. Just her voice really hits my ear the wrong way. And, well, for another, it's, I feel like this really should not have gone as well as it did. I mean, you're supposed to be in and out clean, take out just a few guards, grab John from the field and hightail it out of there. Only problem was, he wasn't one of the prisoners in the field, so we had to grab a guard, take his hostage, whom, for whatever inconceivable reason, is luckily not dead, because despite getting a headshot on him, he just got grazed. I mean, the fact I mean, luck alone is what makes this mission successful. And just putting down one guard, just being fortunate enough that enough people like the guard that we happen to not kill, and they release one of the most wanted criminals willingly into our custody, and it's something that we should not have gotten away with. And since Dutch really didn't want him, we have to hear his annoying nature when we get back to camp. And another thing, the state of Lemoyne, which we are still camped at for whatever reason, is in full lockdown upon doing this mission. Now, granted, I don't really run into that many Pinkertons in free roam. In fact, most times the only time I run into Pinkertons is when I'm doing the Delights of Van Horn mission. But the fact is, it's just still not. It's still a bit of an inconvenience on the rare occasion that it does. This one just, yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's not as good as my other top 8 picks. So, yeah, I think I've said all I need to say. Moving on. And at number 8, I have elected to put Favored Sons. Now, the reason why this one is so low on the list is because, well, as I've been thoroughly expressing, this shouldn't even be allowed to happen. I mean, what we have here is just a bunch of Native Americans acting stereotypically savage, and Dutch acting as a catalyst to that savagery, to a convoy full of just young pawns, young soldiers. As Dutch says, these guys aren't the problem. So it's just a waste of energy, and again, it gets eagle flies captured. I will say the main reason why I like this one is because, Dutch knows the rules of engagement. He says, your men fired first, which, they did, but who's gonna believe him anyway? But anyway, but more importantly, I have put it at number 8 in the top 10 because of the iconic quotes from Dutch when he says, "You can't fight nature, Captain. You can't fight change. You can't fight gravity." And at this point, he chooses to Dutch to jump off the cliff with Arthur, which is not only amusing to me, but it's an interesting parallel to what he says in the original Red Dead Redemption. So, yeah. Oh, and plus there's a bunch of action. You get to blow up more stuff, so it's not a terrible mission, but the story behind it is it's kind of a low point, which honestly can be said about a lot of the Chapter 6 missions, but I digress. And I think I said all there is to say about it. Yeah, I think so too. Moving on. And coming in at number 7, I have put Icarus and Friends. Now, I feel like this is a good placement for it because, I mean, it's kind of just a setup mission, you know, like before a heist in GTA Online, doing some recon. And so, I mean, it's nothing too special, but, I mean, we do get to fly an air balloon. So, from Arthur's perspective, flying men is just a thing of dreams and deluded fantasies. And the events of this mission put pain to those thoughts. So in that regard, it's a majestic mission. Just would have been nice if there were fewer clouds, so that you know, you could see better. And so it's quite an experience for Arthur, especially for, you know, a dead man walking, as he found out not that long ago. So yeah, so as things were getting kind of boring, Sadie, causing trouble as usual, gets into trouble with some O'Driscolls who we haven't really seen in the story for quite some time at this point. So it was nice to kill some O'Driscolls again, even though you know, Sadie just can't seem to stay out of trouble. It's kind of annoying how she just can't keep it down, but it's not that annoying. I can look past it, since it adds to what was which for the most part was kind of a regular mission, apart from, you know, being able to fly and being shot at for some guards for hovering too close to the fields at Sisika Penitentiary. You know, rest in peace to can't remember the man's name who owned the hot air balloon, but you know, it was just rest in peace to him. So yeah, I mean, it doesn't quite crack the top 6, but it's still up there for sure. I think you can agree to this one. Doesn't quite trump the ones I put above it though, so let's move on to number 6. And for the number 6 spot, I'm going to have to give it to Our Best Selves. So, the reason why this one beats the top 6 and not top 5 is simply because I think the top 5 I've chosen are simply better and more profound. But the reason why this one is still so high is because it's a train heist scene. I mean, the only drawback being I don't get to see a cent of the loot, which, why would I? I'm a dead man walking, and free roam is pretty much disabled, so, but yeah, another drawback is you have to hear Sadie arguing with Cleet and or Joe, which actually I didn't really find it all that bad. In fact, it was kind of amusing. And also I get to use a Gatling gun, which is in and of itself really fun, really satisfying to see those lawmen splatter. I know, so graphic. You know, we it's just, I think the gameplay speaks for itself. You know, it's a really fun mission. It would be a crime to put it any lower than this. And you know, plus the conversation that Dutch and Arthur have in the beginning, where he asked if he could cut Jack, Abigail, and John loose. And Dutch pretended to like the idea, but we could tell that he didn't care for it as he walked away. He was like, he insists upon it. Yeah. So yeah, and we have to hop off the train just before the bridge that was previously blown up by John and I. So yeah, it's an interesting parallel. Oh, and that witty remark from Arthur when the train doesn't come to a complete stop. He's like, should I just get on right now? Yeah, that's the sarcastic sense of humor that I love so much, that we all love. Oh, and the part where one of the shoulders that we shot, gun misfires and shoots a lantern, thus making a car burn. And John and I have to get on a Dutch and Dutch's steed, and I gotta tell you, if only my horse was ever as good at maintaining speed as the horse I use. I mean, it's you have to wonder how I was like able to beat him in, you know, the race and the one chapter 3 mission, American Distillation. And I think I know it has the word distillation in it, but is it American Distillation? Yeah, I think so, but whatever. You don't have to correct me. I've already ranked every mission. I can always just go back and check whenever I want, just not right now. So yeah, so we have to hop back on the next car, and at that moment John gets shot and falls off the train. Spoiler alert, or I guess it was kind of already spoiled that he lived, but Dutch tried to convince us that he died, but you know, it's what it is. So yeah, I mean, it's just a heist scene that we don't benefit in any way, so it's nothing too special. But the fact that it's one of the last 2 missions and like everything's, you feel like, has been building up to this point, it just puts it a little higher. And plus it's totally action packed, which is always so much fun. But yeah, I think I've said all there is to say. Let's move on. Oh, actually, first I almost forgot to mention it was nice to see pretty much the entire gang riding out. Even Sadie this time, which we haven't really seen since the Blood Feud Ancients and Modern mission. Although, in fairness, we actually did see something similar to that. We actually did see that quite recently in the mission previous to this one, but yeah, well, I'll get to that I'm getting to that, you know, very soon. And by very soon, I mean right now. And coming in at the number 5 spot, I've decided to put My Last Boy. Yeah, you had to know this had to appear in the top 10, in the top 5 somewhere. I mean, it was either this or my third, my 4th pick, and I'm not going to say what it was because spoilers. The reason why I chose to put this one here is because, well, it's a cinematic masterpiece of a battle. Honestly, I would say the only 2 things I don't like about it, or three things, is one, it leads to the very tragic death of eagle flies, which I mean, I think the game developers know it was going to be tragic because they bothered to code in a grave for him that you can pay respects to in free roam. The only character that you can pay respects to outside of the Vanderlyn gang. So it was clearly an impact. And I also am not a big fan of Dutch abandoning me as I get blasted in the eyes with steam. Honestly, that right there, I mean, I was never really on the Dutch hate train like everyone else until that point in time when he did that. But, I mean, it was important for the story, but it's just, I can't excuse it. And the one other thing, and this is kind of minor, is that there's the quotes from the quotes from Arthur when after Dutch says, "Oh, you're a hero, Arthur," and Arthur says, "I'm just a regular good guy." That was kind of cringy in my opinion. So but yeah, I mean, Dutch too also, kind of annoying after giving Arthur a hard time after finding out that he's been helping Rain's Fall, which I forgot that he was completely unaware of, honestly. But one thing I like about it is the monologue from Rain's Fall of how I think it's a philosophy that a lot of us, if not all of us, can live by. The water and the land can endure, so we must endure too. That's I think that's a pretty powerful message, but of course it flew right over Eaglefly's head, being the angry adolescent that he is. And another thing, I do enjoy the us all riding out. I'm not really too big a fan of the dialogue. The constant fighting between the characters, but whatever. And of course, I can't talk about this mission without pointing out the fact that you finally get to kill Colonel Favors. I just lost the name for a moment there, but unfortunately not before he shot Eagle Flies after he saved me. He did what Dutch was too unwilling to do, put his life on the line. Oh, and another thing, I also like the dialogue between Arthur, Eagle Flies, Charles, and what was the name of his friend? Peta. I think that was his name. You don't have to correct me if I'm wrong, because by the time I release this, I will have figured it out. I mean, after I release this, I will have figured it out, I guarantee you. But yeah, I like the dialogue between them, and he's and at the point where Arthur says when they talk about Dutch, he says maybe he's just more of who he really is, which is a quote from what Rain's Fall said to him, that about how we only become more of who we really are, that we don't really change. I think that is more I think that had to have left more of an imprint on me on my philosophy than the whole we must endure type situation. And when you're in the middle of the action, I like how you have the ability to determine the fate of Eagle Flies' men, and how you, if you fail to cover certain characters, that they will die. I just think that's a neat, realistic battleground type feature that Rockstar, added in. So yeah, it's great time. But with all the negatives laid out like that, I just couldn't put it any higher than the number 5. But I think you guys can understand. Oh, and also I forgot to almost forgot to mention that once we deliver Eagle Flies to the Wapiti Indian Reservation, how oh, and that's another thing, we leave Charles there. Yeah, there's that's the last time we see him as Arthur. So yeah, he stays behind to help the occupants of the Wapiti Indian Reservation pack up. So yeah, it's a lot of goodbyes. But anyway, on the way back, Arthur collapses once again on the road, and like, I don't know if this was a coincidence, but when he collapses on a Y intersection. I feel like Rockstar had that done on purpose as some kind of symbolism as to whether Arthur has to pick a path, and before he does, he is undone by his own situation, and who saves him but the German family who rescues him during a strange kindness. This is the turns out this is the moment in which a German that everyone thought was in Red Dead Redemption 2 saves him, not the other guy from Fork in the Road. I personally don't see it. I figured it wasn't the same guy, as been proven by Strange Man channel. And what they were doing in the area when they live all the way in Ansburg, not really sure, but it's an interesting parallel. And by this point, the family already speaks English pretty well, and so they are able to communicate how Arthur saved them. So now they're saving him. Yeah, it's very important stuff. So yeah, uh, it's a great mission all around, but the negatives are significant enough to the point where I couldn't justify putting it at number 4. Well, I could justify it because, again, they could be flipped either way, but I think Archaeology for Beginners should get the number 4. I mean, the number 4 spot, because there are fewer negatives to wear it down. Now, on one hand, the mission is really, really slow as opposed to the number 5 pick, which was very intense. So, but I mean, the only true The only two true complaints I have about it are the fact that the part where you have to survey the wreckage, figure out where it was. I feel like there are way too many clues to go through, and that's another thing, that freaking campsite, which pretty much blocks the entire road just about. I mean, I realize it's just slightly off to the road, but honestly, that area, everything is like so overgrown that it can be tough to tell the difference. But the other nitpick I have is that I feel like when the point comes where you have choice dialogue, I feel like for the most part, I feel like at first, like, there's a glitch where Rainsfall counts on you to lead the way, even though you have no idea where you're going. I don't know, he just really stays still for way too long. And really, that's about it. Now, the first complaint, yeah, I realized that you could technically just probably just go over to the cliff edge and say screw it to the clues at camp and take a look at the down below at the camp, but my OCD kept me from ever really trying it. So, but yeah, focusing on all the positives, I like how you can choose a dialogue. Oh, and this is the mission that I said earlier where you can choose whether or not to help Captain Monroe, which of course I always elect to do so because I have a hard time saying no. But I'm sure dishonorable players could easily avoid that mission if they wanted to say no. At least I'm pretty sure that's how it works. Let me know in the comments if you've ever gotten a mission in which you helped Captain Monroe after saying no. But yeah, I also like how this mission introduces the first time that Arthur talks about his son, Isaac. It's really the only time he mentions Isaac, unless you get that secret cutscene with Mother Superior in The Fine Art of Conversation, in which case he mentions it twice throughout the story, but again, not every player in the world has gotten that gotten that mission chain, unlocked that cutscene. Moreover, it's very interesting how Rainsfall proves that sometimes you don't need to kill the animals that are coming after you. They weren't really coming after you because, like, through some stroke or miracle, the wolves just completely went away from us. The only time I've ever seen that is in online free roam, where like 4 or 5 wolves are chasing after me and they back off as soon as I dismount my horse. That was really weird NPC behavior, but you're going to see that in a future video if I manage to save the footage. But anyway, I also like the dialogue between the two, which gets interrupted periodically when when Rainsfall stops to pick up some herbs for Arthur to help with his sickness. It's it's and then once you reach your destination, you have to get Rains Falls things, and it is possible to not kill anyone, which I did for this video. Of course, it took me a few attempts, but I got it done eventually. So yeah, I think I have said all there is to talk about. Again, a pretty simple mission, but a profoundly insightful one nonetheless. And you do get to clobber some people in the end, so it's not totally boring. And at number 3, I've put Mrs. Sadie Adler, Widow. Now, for those of you who are new to the series, I include every part of the mission as one single mission. So I'll be talking about part 1 and 2. The reason why this one is so high is because we are helping Sadie Adler of all characters, and we all like her. And, you know, again, plus, have a tough time saying no, so, yeah. So the story is that she finds out where the rest of the O'Driscolls are hiding out, which is all the way back in West Elizabeth. So we have the option to help her clear them out and get her vengeance. And another thing, it's one of those things in which you don't have to actually help her, which, I mean, why not? But then as another choice, you can either vote to go with her, so essentially fast traveling, or just go over there on your own time when you can. And that is where the part 2 is. I always elect to fast travel. Go with her, I mean, because it's just way faster that way, obviously. I mean, Roanoke Valley and West Elizabeth are on the complete opposite ends of the map of Red Dead. So by going with them, you're essentially fast traveling, and plus, since another good thing is while you're over there after the mission, you can do a bunch of free roam stuff, you know, do other side missions that are missable, or collect some legendary fish or animals. The possibilities are endless. You know, sometimes what I do is, you know, after I complete this mission, I do the final mission, the final part of the side mission, The Ties That Bind Us, the final mission of Oh Brother, and I also like to collect the bright red, or hook the bright red fish that is over in Lake Isabella in the Snowy Mountains. So yeah, there are so that is part of the reason why this is so high, is because it conveniently spawns you on that side of the map to do whatever extra stuff you want to do. And another thing is when you first meet, the first few chapters in which you speak to Sadie Adler, she has a tendency to be a little rude. I mean, I give her the benefit of the doubt because, you know, she's a grieving widow. But at one point, she said something along the lines of, "My Jakey was better than any of you men put together." And of course, that's because she didn't know us all that well. But at the end of this mission, after she finally takes her vengeance, she says something along the lines of, "Aside from my Jakey, you're the best man I've ever known, Arthur." To which Arthur replies, "I know the kind of company you keep. The competition ain't too fierce." Which is right. And honestly, when she says that my Jakey was better than all of you men put together, I'll be honest, I was a little hurt, not gonna lie. But I mean, she's not wrong, honestly. After all, I have met Jake Adler in GTA Online. I've done some work for him every now and then when I can be bothered to go up into the mountains and replay a bunch of free roam missions, but you know, whatever. So yeah, that is real character development right there, which I have to say really is what brings this mission up for me. I mean, if taking vengeance out on O'Driscoll's isn't enough to get you to go to West Elizabeth, then you could always just decline if you really want. But I think it's worthwhile. And as far as I know, I mean, I'm sure it's possible to encounter some O'Driscolls after the fact, but as far as I can tell, as far as the story goes, we are taking out the very last of the O'Driscolls. I mean, they're essentially an army of gang members. Like, there's a ton of them. And so after the as I mentioned in a previous upload, the O'Driscolls tend to have a lot of loot on them. Like, with every body you loot, you're like, I'm gonna say $2 to $7 richer. And in the economy of the late 1800s, that's really saying that's a lot of money. So yeah, I mean, and plus you can, after the mission is complete, you can go back into the house, and there's a lot of stuff you can collect. Like, you can loot the fat guy that Sadie personally wanted to kill for herself. And when you do, you can pick up a letter from Colm O'Driscoll. And when you read it, it actually makes himself seem human. Like, there was a real person behind those eyes. And apart from that, you can also collect some billfolds and some cigarette cards and a bunch of other chump change foods. And doing all of that when trying to do all of that when the law is on their way, because, you know, you just set fire to a barn and shot up a bunch of people in an open valley, it's gonna attract attention. It happens. But doing that, but collecting everything you want to collect and getting away before the law, you know, see you, pretty satisfying when you get it done successfully, I have to admit. I didn't collect any footage from when I did that, but I actually did do it once, in which I was able to get away from them quietly while they were circling the property. Yeah, I felt pretty good about myself. Again, you'll have to take my word for it. But yeah, it might be a little higher on the list, but now, speaking of killing O'Driscolls, I think... Oh, before I finish that thought, I just remembered you get a free Litchfeld repeater, which gives you ability to hold 2 more bullets than the Lancaster repeater. But yeah, speaking of killing O'Driscolls, I think that the number 2 pick should go to Goodbye, Dear Friend. To tell you the truth, I think that 1 and 2 could be flipped either way. But the reason why this one is kept from the number 1 spot is because, for one thing, you also have to say goodbye to Mary Linton once the mission is over, because Tilly Jackson will give you her final letter. So, I mean, yeah, it's pretty sad, but kind of knew it wasn't gonna keep their rekindled romance, if you could call it rekindled. I feel like she more or less just used him. Not that she hated Arthur's company. I just feel like she was stringing him along, poor guy. But anyway, I don't really have anything else to complain about. I mean, I could complain about Sadie's rageful temper, but you know what? Hell hath no fury. What are you gonna do? So, you have to dress up as a cop, scope out the joint, identify a couple of O'Driscolls who are no doubt part of his failed attempt to escape, and once you figure out what they have planned, you get to go over to the area where you have a sniper perched, ninja parkour style, and you get to beat up an O'Driscoll that is charging at you, and then from there you have to just watch as Colm is about to be executed. And when he's about to be executed, you could see a human in those eyes. Like, you could see that there was genuine fear behind them. Like, this is it. This really is my final moments on Earth. Yeah, so it seems pretty sudden for him. I mean, with Arthur, he has like a ton of time to cope still, but, well, not a ton, but just compared to Colm, he has more time. So, yeah, I feel like this is the first time since about the time the chapter started, if not earlier, that both Dutch, Arthur, and Sadie are on the same page of what needs to be done. But according to her, as Sadie said, we're in rough agreement on how we're doing it. So, yeah, and of course, you know, Sadie goes crazy and kills we have to kill a bunch of lawmen and other O'Driscolls. And I get to use my sniper to provide cover support. Yeah, look at that. I'm providing cover support with a sniper, and I'm not even in Van Horn. Look at that. And, I get them out safely. They have to, I can be seen throwing away my borrowed, police officer gear. And, oh, this is another thing that I don't like, that after you do that, it's like sometimes the game glitches. Once you throw away your uniform in a trash can in Saint Denis, you're supposed to spawn at camp back at Beaver Hollow. sometimes there have been glitches where you spawn outside of the map, like there's just a blanket of white underneath your feet, or unfinished textures rather, I should say. But yeah, fun mission, and if not for those occasional glitches and the fact that you not only say goodbye to Colm finally, but you also have to say goodbye to Mary, kind of sets it back to me. I mean, it could still, like I said, 1 and 2 could still be flipped either way, but right now I think I'm happy with this at being number 2 and just placing number 1 at just a social call. Now, where to begin with this one? Where indeed? Well, how about the fact that Leviticus Cornwall bastard finally gets what he deserves. Yeah. And also the words that Dutch and him exchange during the mission, how Dutch says, "You rob, I rob. I kill, you kill. Only difference I see is I choose whom I rob and kill, and you just destroy everything in your path." Which is very true. I mean, have you seen the remains of Limpany and the guy in the Heartlands who had that little oil rig? If you loot him, you can find a letter from Cornwall and Tar explaining how he rejected Leviticus Cornwall's proposal to let his little mining operation be part of Cornwall and Tar, and he refused, and well, since he's a corpse, we can see what happened. So yeah, I mean, also Dutch also displays some self-awareness. I mean, the dialogue between Dutch and Cornwall is really something to hear. How Dutch says how his associate, being myself as Arthur, thinks he's completely lost his mind, which he does, and thing is, when Dutch announces himself, he was busy talking to the boat captain and some Pinkerton associates who Cornwall has just been very harsh to. So he says, just like this poor young fellow right here, my feelings are hurt. The remarks from Dutch just never cease to intrigue me with this bit of dialogue. So Dutch comes up to him with the proposal that he lets him and his gang walk free with the ship, and he won't kill him. And of course, Cornwall decides not to heed Dutch's threat, and Dutch says, "Good, I prefer it this way." And of course, a shootout breaks out with Pinkertons and some local law enforcement, I'm sure. And meanwhile, Micah has gone off collecting some papers from someone, and So yeah, we have to fight our way through the coal mine and through the coal mine facility and escape on a bunch of shires. Oh, and you get to blow up a couple wagons if you want. You could just take out the Pinkertons through bullets, but blowing stuff up is more fun. So it's yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's not really much to explain about this one. It's just a really, really good one. So, yeah. Also, I just remembered to add, I don't care what Arthur says. Leviticus Cornwall really did have to die sooner or later. And we finally finished the job. And also running through the mowing through these hostiles with only 2 revolvers, or a revolver and a pistol. It's pretty satisfying. Makes you feel totally badass. Finally we're at the end of the video. Before I close this off, you should make sure to subscribe, because trust me, you are not going to want to miss the content that I've got planned this year. And just as well, since by the end of the year, I plan on reaching 100 subs by this year's end. So help me get closer to that goal and hit the subscribe button like I said. And also leave a like, because if you've made it this far into the video, you must have really enjoyed it. So with all that out of the way, I'm Dr. Stephen James. I'm saying peace. Later, guys. See you soon.